Mic check 1 2 3. Mic check 1 2 3. Mic check. Checking. 1 2 3. Check. Mic check 1 2 3. Mic check. We're live. Check 1 2 3. Mic 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 check 1 2 3. Check. Mic 1 2 3. Check. 4 5 6 7 8 9. 1 2 3. Mic check. Mic check.
Yeah, we met before. Mark, how are you? Good to see you. I'm not nervous. Matt makes me nervous because he's the tech guy. You know, I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to screw anything up. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this.
Well, thank you. I hope I don't disappoint anybody. Did you?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. I'm better off the cuff, so hopefully softball questions are good.
No, you won't. I'll put him over there.
Thank you.
being here today at the Nittany Lion Inn. This is our second ever live episode recording of Dare to Disrupt, and it's our first ever off-site recording, so we're so thankful to the team here at the Nittany Lion Inn for hosting us. It's really a phenomenal space, and so a big thank you to the Nittany Lion Inn team who worked to make this event possible. So this is Dare to Disrupt, a podcast about Penn State alumni who are innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders, and the stories behind their success. This is also a Global Entrepreneurship Week Penn State event, so thank you to the Penn State Small Business Development Center for featuring this event as part of the week-long celebration. I also want to thank the Penn State Smeal College of Business for partnering with us on this event. So I'll kick things off by introducing our Dare to Disrupt podcast host, Ryan Newman. Ryan is a managing director at Goldman Sachs, where he co-founded and co-leads a private wealth management team managing more than $13 billion on behalf of Fortune 500 executives, Forbes 400 families, entrepreneurs, family offices, foundations, and endowments. Ryan earned his Bachelor of Science in Economics with honors in 2001 from Penn State, where he graduated first in his major and was student marshal at graduation. He and I launched this podcast together in 2021, and it has achieved well over 50,000 downloads to date. So be sure to use the QR code on the screen just outside the door before you leave today to follow and subscribe Dare to Disrupt wherever you listen to podcasts. And now I'll hand things over to you, Ryan.
Thank you so much, Katie. And round of applause for Katie. She does an amazing job. And I'm going to do my formal interview that I normally do, or introduction, for those of you that are used to hearing from on the audio recording, and then we'll go right into our interview. This is Dare to Disrupt, a podcast about Penn State alumni who are innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders, and the stories behind their success. I'm your host, Ryan Newman, and on the show today is Gary Brandeis. Gary is the CEO and co-founder of Scholar Hotels, a hotel ownership and management group with a focus on properties close to major college and university campuses. Gary acquired his first hotel in 2006 and has since been directly involved in the hospitality business as an investor, developer, and manager. Scholar Hotels made its State College debut in March 2017 when it opened the 165-room Hyatt Place State College. Since then, the group has expanded its State College properties to include the Scholar Hotel, the Courtyard by Marriott, the Residence Inn by Marriott, the Penn State Hotel and Conference Center, and of course, the Nittany Lion Inn. Gary graduated from Penn State Smeal College of Business with a degree in accounting. This is a first for us, Gary. You're the first entrepreneur we've had in the show whose business owns and operates in the very building where we're recording today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for being here, Ryan. I'm glad to have everybody at the Nittany Lion Inn. This is a great start for us here, and thrilled to have everybody in the building. Thank you.
Great. Well, we're going to start as we always do, which is at the beginning. So, Gary, if you wouldn't mind, share with our guests some of those early years. So even before Penn State, how you initially came to school and what that experience was like just in those early formative years growing up.
Thank you. So I grew up in suburban Philadelphia, and the natural path for me was a state university. So I was in a situation where I was going to have to pay my way through college, and Penn State was the most affordable and best education that I could get, frankly. And so I followed my older sister here to Penn State and started in 1984. I had a work-study program my first semester where I helped education majors learn how to use overhead projectors and film projectors. That was my first job here at Penn State. So I knew I wanted to be in business. I got some really good advice early on that accounting was sort of the best major for me to be in, regardless of what type of business I wanted to go into. And I would tell you that I think I had that entrepreneurial bug early on.
And when you say you had the entrepreneurial bug early on, was there any signs of that when you were growing up as a kid? I mean, were you into sports? Were you into the arts? Just take us into the mind of your early years, sort of pre-Penn State.
Yeah, so I wasn't much of an athlete. I was an average athlete. But I was fortunate. My grandparents owned a home in Atlantic City, New Jersey when I was growing up. So I would spend my summers there working at various places on the boardwalk, in casinos, in restaurants, as a waiter, as a busboy, as a cook. and a pot washer. I did pretty much everything in restaurants. And so it's funny how I ended up in the hospitality business because I really got my start in sort of the restaurant space. So I was an average guy. I would tell you that I wasn't a 4.0 student. I wasn't a great athlete. I sort of was kind of in the middle, I guess, and that carried me. But I think I was a hard worker. I think I had a good work ethic, and I just was one of those young men who worked really hard, put in the hours, and I knew that if I wanted to do things and go places, that I had to earn money and do it myself. And I think that's what drove me early on.
Love that. So from pot washer to property manager.
Yes, that's a good one. I like that.
So you come to Penn State and you get on campus. You'd already been here, you said, because of your sister, so you had a sense for it. What was some of those early experiences like once you stepped foot on campus as a student?
Yeah, so my high school was pretty small. I started in the summer. I started summer session in summer of 1984. And to me, summer session was like summer camp. Yeah, I took a couple of classes, but I got to meet a lot of great people. I found my way around campus. We were at the pool. We would go to parties. And so for me, it was a lot of fun. But when the fall came around and then 40,000 people descended on Happy Valley here, I kind of knew my way around. I had a group of great friends that I made during the summer. So I think that helped me fast-track my freshman year maybe a little bit quicker than if I wasn't at summer session. So I think that gave me a really good start here.
So you off to a fast start, it sounds like, and you had some good advice about majoring in accounting. You know, accounting is, dare I say, an acquired taste. I mean, this is not something that people just sort of wake up saying, I love debits and credits, although except for maybe somebody like Greg Pierce, who we have in the audience today as a finance professor. He's never found a number he doesn't like, by the way. But for most of us, it's something you've got to sort of warm up to. So when you got into those first early accounting classes, was it love at first sight, or was it more kind of acquired taste for you?
Well, I took accounting in high school, and what I realized was 2 years of accounting in high school was 2 weeks for my first accounting class here. And I don't know if anyone remembers G.K. Nelson. So my first accounting class was on TV. So we'd go to a classroom. The professor would live stream on TV into the classroom. And so it was pretty interesting. If you wanted to ask a question, you'd push a button on the wall, and the professor would be, oh, there's a question in room 112. And so that was my first accounting class.
Wow.
But what I liked about accounting was it was black and white, right? Debits equal credits, assets equal liabilities plus capital, right? You never forget those basic accounting things. And so it made sense to me. And I think I felt like if I could learn accounting and I could figure out how to read balance sheets and profit and loss statements and cash flow statements, that I could apply that to lots of different businesses.
So what's really fascinating is, if I'm hearing you correctly, you were using the accounting as a means to an end, as opposed to just the end in itself. So right from the start, you were trying to sort of focus on the utility of the practice of accounting, as opposed to saying, I want to be an accountant for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I think so. I think ultimately that's where I ended up with my accounting education and my short accounting career. So when I graduated, I worked at Price Waterhouse, and that was the best move that I made. And the reason for that was I didn't really know what I wanted to do or what industry I wanted to be in. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I know at the end of the day I wanted to start my own business and my own company. But working at Price Waterhouse gave me the opportunity to see, I don't know, a dozen different industries. So I was at manufacturing clients, technology clients, banking clients, real estate clients. And so I got to see a wide array of different businesses and industries. And I would tell you that real estate, I had a lot of real estate clients, and it just, real estate made sense to me. I understood it. But I think what I liked most about real estate was it was a numbers game, right? We were running, it was accounting, it was finance, it was valuation, and the things you do in lots of different industries. But I love the physical part of the business, right? You're sitting in real estate, right? We buy, operate, and manage buildings. And so we do financial analysis, we do market studies, but then we have to know about roofs and windows and floors and air conditioning and heating. And so it turns the numbers into something real. And so the most satisfying part, I think, of what I do is we took this old Nittany Lion Inn and we made it something new, interesting, and different. And so to see it, feel it, walk in it, see other people's expressions, hopefully good expressions when they walk in, is very gratifying.
Well, and we're obviously going to talk about this amazing space we're in and all of that. And as the lead up to that, I guess a couple more questions related to these early years related to when you were at PwC. Did you find yourself being the type of person that actually was drawn to these, you talk about the physical spaces, are you also handy? You know, for example, there's two types of real estate owners. Those that always can be found with a hammer in their hand and those that run in the direction from a hammer.
So I would say that I'm a handy guy. You know, when I was younger and a little bit more fit, I would definitely do a lot of work around my own house. And I think one of the things that we like to do in my company is no job is too important or not important that we wouldn't do it ourselves. So you might see me bussing tables, picking up trash, shoveling snow in any of our buildings. If you've been at our Hyatt project here in State College, after a football game, I'm bussing the tables, running the dishwasher in the back to make sure that we've got a good environment and a good experience for our guests. So I would tell you that for our company and the way I run the business, we all do everything at any moment. Whatever we have to do to be successful and to make sure our customers and clients and guests have a good experience, we'll do it.
So you're at PwC. You're going into lots of different...
No C.
Just PW.
Yes.
Just Pricewaterhouse. And now PwC.
That's how old I am. But anyway, go ahead.
No, Coopers & Lybrand was a different business,
Yes.
right? So just PW. And you're in that business, and you're experiencing all these different companies. You're getting a sense for this interest in real estate. But there's that moment, Gary, where you have to take the ultimate plunge to say, I want to be an entrepreneur. Said differently, I want to turn off the paycheck and basically have a self-financing type of business model. What was the moment where you realized that A, that was in your future, and B, that moment had actually arrived?
So I think two ways. One, I knew that I didn't want to put my future into someone else's hands. I wanted to control my own fate and my own future, and I didn't want to count on other people to make sure I achieved the goals that I had laid out for myself. So that was the first thing. When I left Pricewaterhouse, I went to work for a large national development firm because I kind of skimmed real estate. The thing about accounting is you spend a couple of weeks, right? You're in an office for a few weeks. You're looking at the year-end numbers. You're doing audit and tax work, but you don't really do a deep dive. So I needed that deep dive into real estate, which is what I wanted to do. So I left PwC and went to work for a large national developer. I moved from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. I worked there for a number of years and then left the company, started my own business, sold that business, and went back to work for that company in Philadelphia. So I did 2 stints for this national development firm, and I think that's where I got most of my experience, sort of the deep dive experience that I didn't get as an accountant working for a public accounting firm. And so when I was in that firm, when I was in the national development firm, that's when I realized, hey, I think I can do this myself. I think I can raise money. I think I can buy buildings. I think I can develop buildings. And so that's where I really got the confidence, and I was able to build a network both in the DC market and the Philly market. And so that really gave me the confidence to do it.
This is a really important point. So would you say that when you first stepped foot in the real estate development company, it wasn't necessarily your thought, I could do this on my own? In other words, that thought of I could do this on my own kind of came with experience and time at the real estate development company as opposed to the moment you arrived on the doorstep. Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely. And I was 24 years old when I got there, and when I joined the office in DC, I was the 6th person hired. 6.5 years later, there was 300 of us in the office. So I was there during a very large growth, but I was the accountant in the office. So I was doing property management accounting, construction accounting, and then by the time I left, I was the vice president of finance. And so I got to do a lot of different things. But it definitely wasn't until I got to see all parts of the business, which was, construction, development, finance, acquisitions, dispositions, loan restructuring, things like that.
So it's interesting. We talk about this relationship between age and experience, right? You talk about being 24 years old and almost in some ways, the way you've explained it, feeling like you had a lot to learn, right? But we've all met and encountered 24-year-olds who feel like they actually already know everything. There is nothing that they can't learn. And so for our younger folks in the room and for those that may be listening, can you talk about that relationship between gaining the experience versus just gaining the years? In your experience, which of those two, if you could parse that out, which would you say mattered more in your development? And how did you sort of think about it, sort of age versus experience?
Yeah. I think everyone's really confident, right? You have to believe in yourself to be an entrepreneur. And if you don't, then you're probably not going to get very far. I think in real estate, if you want to be an entrepreneur in real estate and you want to develop and invest, it's not like starting a tech company with $100 in the bank and you sell your time for money, or you're incubating an idea. In real estate, you have to have a lot of money, right? You have to raise money to buy a building or develop a building. So it's a much different path than if you're a tech startup or you're starting a consulting practice and things like that. So I felt like I needed a lot of experience and I needed the ability to raise money in real estate. And the only way you can really do that is by having experience, a track record, and a network. And so it takes a while to build that track record. And so I'm not very patient, but I would tell you probably the most patient I've ever been in my life was waiting for the right moment where I felt like I could do it. Now, I was married, right? I had 2 young kids, and so we needed some money, right? I needed a paycheck, I needed health insurance, and pay the mortgage. So there was this sort of juggling act that I had to do at the time to make sure that I could take care of my family, but also chase my own dream as well.
So you laid out something very interesting there, a mental model, if you will. You said it takes experience, a track record, and a network. So the experience is going to come with time with respect to what you're actually doing in the business. Talk to us about the track record. In theory, you don't have a track record until you sort of go off and do it, although maybe you do, and I'd love to hear about that. And then the network is obviously really critical as well. So we've got the experience piece, but talk to us about the track record and the network.
So I think there's 2 track records. One, the track record I had when I was with the national development firm, which is good, but probably not good enough to start on your own. Because you're part of a team, right? You're one person of 7 or 10 that's part of a development project, right? And so even though that development could be successful, I could put it on my resume of, hey, I was part of the team that did this. I was one facet of many. So if you want to be an entrepreneur in real estate, you almost have to build your track record on your own. And so the track record with somebody else helps, but it doesn't get you all the way there. So the way I started was I was able to connect with someone who was a little bit older than me, who had money. He was looking to make investments and wanted someone to do all the work, right? So that was a really good match, right? He was older, was very successful, wanted to invest in real estate, but didn't really want to do any work. I was young, I didn't have any money, and I was willing to do all the work. And so that was sort of a match made in heaven for me, and that's what really got me started. And he and I created a little partnership, and we built a 238,000 square foot building in downtown Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And so it was the first new office building built in downtown Harrisburg in like 30 years. We bought the land, we built the building, and the building's been 100% leased since 2007 when we delivered it.
Wow. So he may have not known about your pot washing skills, but that obviously came in handy there once again.
It did.
So this idea of network and knowing people, how did you think about building a network? And how did you think about, in particular, attracting people that may be of a different age vintage from you, looking for a different experience? Just talk to us about sort of the insights that you used to sort of create that network.
So I think when I was trying to build my network, we didn't have LinkedIn, right? So you actually had to do it. You had to go to events and conferences, and you'd get your business cards. I remember I had a 3-ring binder with all my business cards in it. I don't know if you're too young for that, right? But anyway, we would collect business cards, and that's how we build a network. And you'd write them down in your notebook, and there was no social media. So networking today is much different than it was when I was younger. And I think it was more difficult, right? I speak to Penn State students a lot, and I say, if you want to connect with me, send me a connection on LinkedIn. So after I speak with students, I'll get 10, 20 more connections into LinkedIn, and it's really easy to communicate. For me, it was a lot more shoe leather, a lot more going to conferences, a lot more outreach. Hey, you want to grab breakfast? You want to meet for lunch? Things like that. So it was more difficult, but I think those connections were much more meaningful back then because we were talking like this,
right?
And we would actually look at each other and talk to each other as opposed to just making a connection on social media. So I was able to build a great network. It probably wasn't as large as, let's say, my network is today, but it was much more impactful.
Right. Well, you've become very popular, Gary. We're sitting in a reason why you're so popular, which is this amazing, extraordinary building, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today. So you set it on your own. There's one more aspect of this that I think is interesting to delve into. This idea of taking someone else's money, right? Being a fiduciary, having the responsibility of for needing to care for investment dollars in this partner. The first time that happens, where literally somebody is handing you their hard-earned money for you to then go and facilitate investment into real estate, just take us in the mindset of that headiness in that moment.
Boy, I was hoping to forget about those days, but if I have to remember them. You know, that first deal that I mentioned before, that was the first time where someone wrote a check because they believed in me and they believed in the project. And so, boy, it was a lot of stress. It was a lot of weight on my shoulders, but I think that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. I would tell you the same thing happened here at the Nittany Lion Inn. When we were chosen to acquire this building and renovate it, I felt the weight of my capital partners because we invested a lot of equity, but I also felt the weight of millions of Penn State people saying, Gary, don't screw it up. And so that was a lot of pressure. But early on, I think, you know, when he wrote that check and signed a loan guarantee and was saying to me, Gary, don't mess this up, that motivated me. It got me out of bed in the morning, and I worked my tail off. And I still own that building today, and so it's been one of the best investments we've had.
Incredible. So now you're in the real estate business. You're on your own. I should say you have partners, but you're developing your own track record. Mm-hmm. You're leveraging your own network. You're putting that capital to work. How did you actually identify being in the hotel space, and how did that interest? You know, there's multiple sectors within real estate you could have focused on, and so what was it about the hotel space in particular that drew you to attraction?
Really two things. One, we bought a hotel in Philadelphia. We were going to tear it down and build apartments and retail. It was a 5-acre site, which is a large site in Philadelphia, but it was going to take us about a year and a half to 2 years to get all of our permits, to do all our designs. So I said, let's keep the hotel open. I hired a management company. They were running it. And we were actually doing pretty well. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't tear it down. And then the permitting and some of the challenges with the site made a redevelopment more difficult than I maybe originally thought. So we acquired the property. And as we were making money with the hotel, I realized a couple things. One, I'd never thought about hotels before. Hotels are much, much different than other commercial real estate classes. So there's 5 classes of commercial real estate. 4 out of the 5 get their revenue from contracts, leases, right? So if you have an apartment, an office lease, a retail lease, or an industrial warehouse lease, hotels get their revenue from a one-night lease, right? You stay at our hotel, you pay us for one night. And so hotels are considered much more risky, if you will, than the other 4. Now, because of certain economic events like the pandemic, office right now is sort of a less favored asset class, but hotels traditionally have always been the riskiest type of asset. But what really made me fall in love with hospitality was I got to do all the same things I always did on other asset classes with real estate. We were buying buildings. We were looking at the market. We were doing physical reviews. I was walking on the roofs, looking at mechanical systems, climbing in the elevator shaft and seeing what was happening in there. So we got to do all those same things. Plus, I'm raising equity. I'm borrowing money from banks. So it's all the same up until operations. In hospitality, you actually run a real business, right? We have 125 employees here at the Nittany Lion Inn. We sell drinks, we sell water, we sell conference and meeting space, we sell hotel rooms. So this is a multi-dimensional business that sits on top of our real estate. And what we've chosen to do is operate ourselves. So a lot of folks invest and build and develop and then hire someone else to manage. We do everything. We're vertically integrated, from raising capital to doing all the development and construction work, and then operating the asset as well.
I think we also just learned a new place. If any of your employees can't ever find you, it sounds like they should be looking in the elevator shafts as well. That's definitely not a place I would expect.
I spent my time in elevator shafts. I spent a lot of time in the attic of this building at night by myself, which is a little creepy. But
well, so you start to get into the hotel business. You've talked about what the risk reward is and the dynamic. And talk to us about your first foray into State College, right? Because
Sure.
for those who haven't been following and tracking your career, they may have only learned of you recently because of their deep affection for the Nittany Lion Inn. The reality is you were punching above your weight in State College long before you stepped foot into this beautiful building. So take us through your first entree into State College.
I got a call in 2013, and someone said, "You want to buy an acre site in downtown State College?" I said, "Really?" I said, I had started school here in 1984. This was 2013, and I couldn't remember a storefront being for sale, let alone an acre, right? So I drove to State College. I looked at the site. It was a parking lot at the time, and I said, "Okay, I'll buy it." I called up a a partner of mine, he and I put a deal together. We acquired the land, and we put together the development plan, the business plan for what's now called the Fraser Center. So we have 50,000 square feet of retail space, which includes a Target and a Planet Fitness. We have a 165-room Hyatt hotel, and we did 26 condominiums on the top 4 floors. So we acquired that land in 2013. We started construction in 2014, and we opened the retail in 2016 and the hotel in 2017.
Incredible. So you've had this major move of development with respect to the Fraser Center. Can you talk about this idea of looking at a parking lot and then saying, great, we'll buy it? I mean, I would think there's a number of site plans you have to do. There's certainly everyone within real estate and development talks about what's under sea level that you got to worry about even more than what you can actually see. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we bought it and said, well, you know, how could we go wrong? What could we do here? So we toiled with what we could build, how much we could build. We could go 155 feet in the air with this new zoning that the borough had just put in place called signature zoning. So we knew we could get a lot of density on our parcel. So we really did 3 things at that building that hadn't either been done before or hadn't been done in a really long time. The first thing we did was we built large format retail space. So the retail spaces in downtown College are pretty small. And so we built a 27,000 square foot space and a 19,000 square foot space. And we knew at the time that larger retailers wanted to be close to college campuses. So before we even finished construction, we had a lease with Target, and we had a lease with H&M, which used to be in the Planet Fitness space. So we were successful in pre-leasing all retail space. We built the first new hotel downtown in 30 years. So when I was a senior at Penn State, the Atherton Hotel opened, which is now the Graduate here in State College. And so that was the last hotel. 30 years later, we opened the Hyatt Place. First new hotel in 30 years.
Wow.
And if you think about the growth in State College and the growth at Penn State from 1987 to 2017, and no new hotels downtown, you know, why didn't someone do that? I'm not really sure, but I'm glad we got to do it. And then we built condominiums on the top 4 floors. We sold all of them but 2 before we were finished construction. So I would tell you that in hindsight, best, most successful project I've ever done.
Incredible. Well, and the space about, you know, when you see that space, you see how striking it is. You also had some elevation issues you had to work with too there.
Yes.
I mean, it's incredibly steep. There's different levels and gradients. Just take us through some of the challenges, again, to this idea of seeing a parking lot and saying, great, we'll take it,
Yeah.
to the actual, you know, design elements and challenges that may have existed.
So there's a 16.5-foot slope from Beaver Avenue to Calder. And so the way we maximize the value of the retail space was we built multiple entrances at different levels of the building. So if you go to the Planet Fitness, you're entering the building on Calder. We also have a mid-block entrance that gets you into the Target and also can take you upstairs into the hotel space and the Federal Tap House, which is our restaurant there. And then we also have the hotel's main lobby and Target's other lobby on Beaver. So by building on the slope, we actually got 3 separate entrances into the building, which allowed us to maximize the value of the ground floor space.
Which also required great engineering, I'm sure, to be able to figure all that out.
Yes, we did. We had to build it. If you notice, there's a big retaining wall with lots of tiles on the wall, so we had to build that in order to get those entrances.
So you have this very striking real estate development project that takes place downtown, brings a Target to town, which I'm sure all the students really appreciate having a Target, and then in addition to the Federal Tap House, a gym, which is I'm sure gets phenomenal use on top of the hotel. So bringing a mixed-use development solution to State College. With that, I assume you then step foot into the other property now, your other hotel in State College. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure.
Scholar?
So we had the opportunity to build a high-rise. So there's a lot of opinions about the high-rises. Some people like them, some people don't. And so we built the first one. And so I think people liked our development to kick off these sort of high-rises because we didn't build any student apartments. So we built a hotel, we built retail, we built residences. So I think our project was looked upon very favorably. And because of the success of the Hyatt, we were given the opportunity to acquire the old Glenlyn building, which is just a few blocks away. And so because we were doing really well at the Hyatt, we thought, let's build another hotel downtown. But we build what we call an extended stay hotel, which is a little bit of a different strategy. So all the rooms in the Scholar have kitchens or kitchenettes. So you can stay for one night, but you can stay for a few weeks. You can stay for even for a few months. In fact, we have students that live at the Scholar. Mostly students that are studying abroad in the spring semester will live there in the fall semester. So a much different product, more boutique driven, very highly designed for State College and Penn State, and it's part of the Tapestry collection, which is a Hilton brand. So the thing that we really liked was we got to do 2 projects in downtown. One, we built this big high rise, which is a little controversial, but then we had the opportunity to preserve a really important historic building in downtown State College. So we got to do both.
Great. And did you think at all about the risks concerned with that in relation to hotels, right? So, for example, with respect to hotels, you have to worry about.
Sorry.
So we talk about, with respect to hotels, is any concern about demand cannibalization, right? You've got one hotel, now you've got another hotel just a couple blocks away. Talk to us about how you avoided demand cannibalization or thought through that.
I think, the Hyatt's 165 rooms, the Scholar's 72. So, there was a very untapped demand for hotel space in downtown State College. So we knew that. We saw the proof of it, the Hyatt. Hyatt was very busy all the time, and so we felt by adding a different type of hotel, an extended stay hotel, in a historic building was a good match. They sell to different markets. They look a little bit different, they feel a little bit different, so we were very comfortable adding 72 more rooms into the downtown.
Got it.
So it was a tough project. It's almost easier to build a new building than renovate a really old building, and I can tell you some really interesting stories about this and that one that make your skin crawl a little bit, the things we find in these old buildings, but that was also a nice success. We actually were under construction during the pandemic. We actually had to stop construction for about 4.5 months because we weren't allowed to be in a building, which was tough on us. And we opened in the pandemic. We opened that hotel in January of 21. We had 6 people check in on the first day, and not many people check in after that.
Wow.
So that was a tough one.
Wow. Well, it's a beautiful property. I've had the chance to stay there. And can you talk about the style element with the Scholar? I mean, when you go there, anybody that's been to the Scholar knows it really is very nostalgic, and it really sort of, you can see it. There's this stylistic intention of drawing on that nostalgia. Can you talk about how that was developed and how you thought through that concept?
Yeah, so 2 reasons. One, when you're in a college town, right, you want your guests and your people that walk in your buildings to have a really good sense of place. So we wanted people to know where they were when they walked in. We wanted to know they were in State College. We wanted them to know they were at Penn State. But we also wanted them to know that they were in a historic building. So when you walk in, you see some really, really great vintage photographs of downtown State College that are on the wall. You also see the building was originally built with an indoor pool. So we had a custom-made lithograph of the pool that sits behind the front desk. So we wanted to make sure that you felt not only a sense of place, but the history of the building as well. And so that was really important to us. The other thing that we learned at the Hyatt was it's a pretty good idea to put your hotel next to a public university, right? And so that gets into sort of our Scholar strategy and why we like being near colleges and universities. But again, that made that a really interesting investment. And once we got out of the pandemic, a really good investment for us.
Sure. So when you're thinking about, so that's the Scholar, right? You have that property.
Screwing up here.
You're doing fine, yeah. Okay. So we have that property, and then another success, clearly having challenges through the pandemic, but then now as a result of that, coming out of that experience, you then have the Nittany Lion Inn come on your radar. So talk to us about the very first time the Nittany Lion Inn came onto your radar as a property developer, a real estate developer, and what that first inkling was like.
Well, it was the summer of 21. And spending a lot of time here with our other 2 assets, we had just opened the Scholar maybe 6 months prior. And I guess I heard a rumor, or I was talking to somebody at Penn State that university was thinking about putting the 2 hotels up for sale. And I was like, the bells and whistles started to go off in my head. And I said, boy, wouldn't that be interesting? And so I started sending emails to people I knew at Penn State. Is this true? Is it really going to happen? And nobody would confirm or deny anything. And so fast forward to the summer of 22, almost a year later, the news came out that Penn State had hired a consulting firm, that they were going to sell the 2 hotels, the Penn Stater and the Nittany Lion Inn. So we were like, oh my gosh, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And so we said, all right, we're going to go for it. So we put in our RFQ, our request for qualifications. We showed obviously our 2 buildings here in State College and some other university hotels that we developed, and we passed the first test, which was the RFQ, and we were invited to participate in the RFP. So we started working on the RFP in late summer of 22, and I'm sorry, 22, excuse me. No, 21. And hold on a second, I'm getting my dates mixed up. Yeah, 22, excuse me, thank you. So we submitted our qualifications in March of 22 to the university. It was 115 pages long.
Wow.
Of everything. They wanted to know everything about us, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to know who we were, where we were, what we did, how we did it. We had to provide long-term projections for both assets, terms and conditions of a long-term ground lease, and all these different structures and things like that. So we submitted our RFP response in March of 22, and then we went through a series of interviews, vetting. I think the folks at Penn State probably looked into my background pretty well. Made sure that I actually graduated, right? How much money had I donated to the university over time, things like that. And so,
By the way, you can always do more.
yes, I know that. And so I got a call on the Friday afternoon before Memorial Day weekend when I was away on vacation with my family. And I remember looking at my phone. I knew who was calling me, and I said, if he's calling to tell me I didn't get the job on the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, he probably could have waited till Tuesday after I had my holiday weekend. But he told me that we were awarded the project, and so that was great news to get on the Friday of Memorial Day weekend. And so from there, we then started the process of doing our real due diligence in the buildings, because the university didn't want us to sort of crawl around the buildings before we were selected. They only wanted the selected group to do that.
Yeah, so your fascination with elevator shafts and attics had to sort of wait until you actually won the contract.
So we won the contract. We signed a letter of intent. That gave us access to the building. So I spent the summer of 22 in this building in the Penn State. Every day we hired architects, engineers, mechanical contractors, plumbers, and we did all of our due diligence. And so we were able to figure everything out that summer.
So this space, the Nittany Lion Inn, is an extraordinary space. Anyone that sees it, when you drive up, it's iconic, it's stately, it's also not new, right? This is an old building. Can you talk about, you mentioned earlier, you alluded to the idea of you'd be amazed at what you would find or the things we sort of uncovered looking through the building. Can you talk about some of that in terms of knob wiring or whatever the case might be that you sort of found when you started looking through the attic and the basement of the building?
So a couple things. This building was built in 3 stages. We're sitting in the part of the building that was built in 1932. Other parts of the building were built in 1955, and the front section where we all walk into the building was built in 1992, 93. So that made it a very challenging construction project because we had 3 methods of construction. The way the building was built changed over those years. And so the way we renovated these spaces was different than we had to renovate the 93 spaces. That includes guest rooms as well. Also includes mechanical systems and heating systems and plumbing systems and electrical systems. So we had a hodgepodge. This building had everything. It's like vegetable soup. You throw it in and it was just a mess, kind of. And as much as I love my alma mater, they didn't do a great job taking care of the building. So we had a lot of things to fix, a lot of things to repair, and a lot of things to replace. And so we did our diligence. We went back to the university. We changed some of the terms and conditions of the deal because of what we found during diligence. And we ended up closing in March of 23, and we started construction. We spent about 60 days just taking asbestos out of the building.
Wow.
So
hopefully not personally, Gary.
No, I did not do that personally. But I was here when it was happening, and I had the hazmat suit on and walked around and things like that. But the 1932 and 1955 buildings had a lot of asbestos in the floors, in the walls, wrapped around piping and things like that. And it was old. It was what's called friable asbestos, which is flaky asbestos, which is where you can get into health issues. So spent a lot of time getting rid of asbestos, a lot of time just getting the building cleaned up and ready for renovation. So that was one of the big challenges, the asbestos problem.
So you come in, you're looking at the space, and your thought is probably on one hand, you want to modernize it and find new ways to highlight and amplify the building. But the other way, you want to sort of have a nod to the history. And there's a tremendous amount of culture and background that goes into this. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that was really important. That goes back to that "don't screw it up, Gary" thing from all the Penn State alumni. So, we could have ripped everything out and made it modern, but that doesn't work, right? We're on a college campus. And we have to honor the history of the building. We have to honor and protect the brand, the Nittany Lion Inn brand, and the university's brand. And that was really important to Penn State when they evaluated our proposals. We said we would do that. We had ways that we were going to do that. And so we're sitting in this room. This is the oldest part of the building. These are original floors from 1932. Wow. These beams above us are original from 1932. All this woodwork, this fireplace, it's all original. So we protected all the original perspective pieces in the interiors of the building in the 1932 section and the 1955 section. The 93 section, obviously not historic, but important to the building. And the other thing that we did, Ryan, was we qualified for both federal and state historic tax credits, which incentivizes us to protect the historic elements of the building, and the federal government and the state government gives us financial incentives to do that. So we benefited from that as well.
So we're in 1855 Lounge, which is the space that we actually are doing this podcast recording from. And this space, for anybody that used to see it prior to the renovation, looked nothing like this. It was simply just a conference room space. It's now been reimagined with this beautiful bar. Also, I noticed the wood beams on the wall. You mentioned about preserving the antique fireplace. Can you talk about how you thought about reimagining a space like this, or triplets, or and even the lobby, which is dramatically different today?
Yeah,
as well?
I think this building didn't utilize a lot of its spaces very well, and so Penn State ran the hotels much differently than we do. We're a for-profit company, right? I have investors, I have lenders, and my job is to create a profitable business, right? So I had to figure out how I could make this profitable, but also protect the history, make it a good experience for our guests, make it warm and welcoming. So you have to combine all those different things for success. So we wanted to make sure that we were utilizing the spaces not only effectively, historically, but also ways to create revenue, right? So that goes back to being a for-profit business. So this room, like you said, had shag carpeting in it. It had a couch maybe, and it was used for some special events, but it wasn't used very much. And so we saw this beautiful room as a revenue opportunity and a utilization opportunity. So we created a second bar that allows our guests to have another space to enjoy. We created some revenue opportunities for the hotel, and it gives us flexibility. So for example, our triplet space, which is the old Whisker space, is right across the hall from the ballroom. So we expect, as we get busier with events and weddings and things like that, to use that space for pre-function, right? So your cocktail party could be in triplets, and then you move it into the ballroom to have your event. Well, what happens when if triplets is being used for pre-function, what happens to all of our hotel guests? If they want to get a drink or a cocktail or have something to eat, where can they go? Well, by having this space, we have an alternative space to do that. So we can satisfy our corporate guests, our social events that are here for events, while still accommodating all of our hotel guests. So that was one of the reasons we wanted to activate this space. Same with the lobby. When you walked into the lobby, you walked into what was a really beautiful building, and respectfully, probably the most disappointing hotel lobby in America. You know, you walked in, there was a desk, a little corridor, and that was it. And so we felt that this building deserved more. So we kind of blew out the wall all the way to the back, and now you can see a courtyard that a lot of people never saw before, because the area behind the old desk was a guest room, a fitness center, and a hot tub room. And I think the hot tub had been decommissioned back in the 70s, I think, maybe the early 80s. And I think the fitness room maybe had a couple of pieces of equipment from the 80s. So I don't think anybody used those spaces. So the only time you saw that courtyard was if you had a guest room that fronted it. So by coming into the lobby, you now have a more of expansive lobby. And actually, we think it mirrors the outside of the building. And that was really important to us. And so we wanted to make sure that we honored the building, the outside, the inside matched the outside. But we also remembered that we're on a college campus. So when you walk in, by adding the bookshelves and some different spaces and sort of gathering areas, it doesn't feel like a furniture store when you walk in, and it has more of a little bit of an academic feel with the library shelves and the books and things like that.
Great. Well, I want to open it up to our guests, our audience, for questions. We have a microphone there. While anyone's thinking of questions you have, just raise your hand and Katie will come to you. While she's thinking, one more question for you,
Yes.
or a comment. You've talked about this idea that you want the lobby of the Nittany Lion Inn to be like Penn State's living room. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, so I think Penn State's President Eisenhower, the United States President's brother, said, I think he named this room Penn State's living room. So it's been part of this building for a really long time. And I think by creating great spaces like this, the lobby, we have a coffee shop now. Hotel never had a coffee shop, right? So we have all these great spaces to spend time in the hotel, and we want everybody to spend time here. Students, faculty, alum, State College residents. We want this to be your home away from home. And whether you're staying with us or having a meal or just getting a cup of coffee or just grabbing an apple and some water at the lobby, that's okay too. Just spend some time with us, hang out in the building, and we want this to be an active, lively space, and we can only do that with everybody from the community being here.
Great. Any questions from the audience?
Hi, I just wanted to say thanks because as a student, I have come here this semester a lot and done some studying in the coffee shop and stuff like that.
How's the Wi-Fi speed? Good?
It's great, yeah, yeah. Able to get all my work done.
Great.
My question is, as a Penn State alum, how do you think that benefited you when starting some of these projects like the Graduate and the Scholar like early on?
Yeah, I think the benefit for me here in State College is I went to school here. So like you, I was a student. I learned a lot. I grew a lot as a student here. And I learned to, like hopefully you did, love this place, right? You know, the wonderful thing about Penn State and State College is I drank the Kool-Aid in a big way, right? And so I live and breathe Penn State. You know, I'm a diehard. I believe blue and white, all those types of things. So I think having a big part of my business here and having projects here not only makes it a lot more fun, but it makes it much more important both to my heart and my brain and my pocketbook, all three. And so when you can combine those three things, that's really cool, right? And so I said when we had the ribbon cutting here on September 3rd, I said to the group that was there for the event, I couldn't have done this project at another campus. I could redevelop a campus hotel at some other university, but it wouldn't have had the same meaning. I probably wouldn't have done it with such vigor and some grumpiness that went along with it when things weren't going my way during construction and things like that. But yeah, it makes my life and my job here in State College a lot more fun. Sure.
Hi, Gary. Thanks. I'm Jesse Remick. I'm a faculty member here. Congrats on the hotel.
Thank you.
I think there's a perception that entrepreneurs today are kind of like super risk on people all the time, and you kind of paint a different picture of that. Could you speak to how you think about risk, both maybe in your professional and personal life, and where those two things intersect?
That's a great question. I think when people think about entrepreneurs, at least today, most are focused on tech companies and tech startups, and so I'm a real estate entrepreneur. Same thing, just different industry, right? Real estate, I think probably any business, is all about risk. How do you manage it, and how do you measure it, right? So in real estate, it's, you know, how much do I have to pay for the building? How much is it going to cost me to renovate it? And what's my revenue and profit opportunity? Just like any business. You know, I think in my business, fortunately or unfortunately, I probably picked the riskiest part of the real estate business. I could have been a broker or a lawyer or an accountant, stayed as an accountant and did that and probably done quite well. But investing other people's money along with my own money, because when I raise money for deals and investments, my investors, the first thing they say to me is, how much money are you putting in? Because they want to know that I've got skin in the game along with them. And I think because I have a good track record, I think that gives them comfort that not only am I protecting their money, but I'm protecting my own money as well. And I also sign loan guarantees and completion guarantees, which ups the ante on the risk side. If you're a tech company, you may not have to do that, right? Because, you know, we have collateral, we have loans, we're borrowing money, we're raising money. So I think about risk all the time, and I think I'm risk adverse, but I can't go too far, or else I wouldn't do anything, right? And so it's funny when I talk to my insurance advisors, they wanted me to insure everything, like every possible scenario that can ever happen in life. And I always push back and say, no. I said, first, I can't afford to buy all that insurance. And two, I'm not going to worry about certain things that you're worrying about. So I think we all have to manage risk. You have to be able to put your head on the pillow at night and go to sleep, right? And know that you're going to wake up in the morning and feel good about your business. But I think risk is, some of it's personal, right? What you can handle just internally with your own mind and body, right? And some of it is what how you feel about the business you're in. I would tell you in the real estate business, you can make the numbers look good if you really want to. Ultimately, a lot of the decision making in real estate is gut instinct. And so, because I went to Penn State, because I had developed 2 other hotels here, either ground up or historic renovation, my gut was telling me we could make this work. And I think that's what gave me the ability to push it over the end zone line to get it done.
While Katie's getting the mic, you talk about this idea of how much risk you can comfortably live with. Is it safe to say that your comfort zone for what you're willing to handle expands over time, and things that would be risky early on are now not as risky anymore as you gain a certain fact? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'll be 59 years old soon, so got a lot of experience. So I'm much more attuned to looking at a deal, looking at a project, and finding those risk points pretty quickly and identifying them quickly. Where when I was 25 or 26, I didn't have that experience. So certainly was probably a lot more sleepless nights back then than I have now. So obviously, like anything, you get better with experience. You learn. You make a lot of mistakes. You learn from those mistakes and hopefully don't repeat them again. So definitely better at measuring risk today than I was when I started.
Gary, I also wanted to congratulate you on an outstanding facility. I've been to 2 events here in the past week. Everywhere I go, just absolutely beautiful. I went to the Bo Nickel event Saturday night, which was outstanding, and then this event today. As a longtime customer, I lived in State College since around late 80. I used to come to the Inn a lot and enjoyed some standard items like lobster bisque. Can't remember if it's lobster or crab. All I know is it's outstanding. And every time I came here, we're able to keep some of those standard favorites on the menu in addition to some really neat new menu items.
Yeah, I think it's lobster bisque, and certainly we have that in our restaurant at Leon, and I heard that a lot. The second thing I heard a lot was apples at the front door, which we have, so hopefully you saw them when you came in. And there's a couple other favorites as well, but we wanted to make sure we had the apples and the lobster bisque and things like that, but we wanted to add a lot more. We wanted it to be the same Nittany Lion Inn, but a better Nittany Lion Inn, and I think we've accomplished that. I've gotten a lot of good feedback. One of my favorite things to do is stand at the entrance and watch people's faces when they walk in, especially when we first opened, because I think that first view when you walk in is so different than it was before, and I think to see people's faces is really gratifying. You know, we have a Harper's boutique here, which is a well-known store that sells great Penn State apparel. You can buy Nittany Lion Inn apparel as well, and so that adds a nice dimension to it as well. We've got great outdoor spaces and indoor spaces, like the courtyard off the lobby now is an active space. We can have events there. We can have, you know, a cocktail party or a small wedding. That courtyard was never available for use before because there was really no way to get there. So I think for us, it's about activating the spaces, making this a warm, comfortable place. I would tell you, during the whiteout weekend, we were really busy, and we had been open for about 2 months at that point, and I was getting a lot of compliments from people about the building. The compliments I really like are when they compliment our people and our staff, the level of service, the quality of food. That's much more meaningful to me and our company. Ultimately, we fixed up the building, but once we're done that, we've got to have great people. We've got to provide great service, and I think that's what I'm most proud of.
Really great. Well, thank you so much, Gary. We appreciate everyone coming today and having a chance to share this story with you. That was Gary Brandeis, CEO and co-founder of Scholar Hotels. This episode was produced and edited by our executive producer, Katie DiFiore. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to Dare to Disrupt wherever you listen to podcasts, and look out for next month's episode. Thanks for listening.
All right, I want to thank both Ryan and Gary for their time today. Let's have another round of applause for them. I also want to thank everyone in the both virtual and in person for coming out today, coming through the snow to be here. I much appreciated, and for everyone's thoughtful questions. So please take a moment before you leave to scan the QR code on the screen just outside the door if you haven't already. Subscribe to Dare to Disrupt, where you can listen to more episodes of the podcast and hear more stories like Gary's. Episodes release every second to last Tuesday of the month. Thank you again to the Nittany Lion Inn for hosting us in this beautiful venue. And I encourage everyone to stick around for the next hour, network, and get some food and drinks at either Triplets or Dear Joe's. I know Gary and Ryan will be sticking around to chat as well. So thank you again to everyone here for coming today.